So I'll say a few words then this afternoon, a little bit around, like a bit the path of practice and from the perspectives of the Thai forest tradition, but grounded in, say, coming from Luang Por Chah, but also combined with a bit of our, say, the perspective from as presented in Theravadan scriptures. Just pick up on one or two little themes. Maybe just pick up on something that Jin Chuan, we were just talking literally before coming over here about the approach to studying Buddhism. Use the word Buddhist hermeneutics, but kind of complicated term, not quite. I think I kind of get what it means, more or less our way of understanding things, or our way of interpreting things. And that there are so many ways of approaching Buddhism from so many different angles. And but certainly in our tradition, and what we look for in terms of the Buddha's teachings is very direct, liberative or enlightenment, the path which takes us away from suffering. So the Buddha framed it in terms of the Four Noble Truths. And this is something which, certainly from the Ajahn Chah, for Thai forest tradition, has always emphasized this. There's in a sense no need to look much further than that. Of course, there are lots of conventions. We have a monastic code. The Buddha gave lots of teachings, lived for 45 years after Enlightenment, and taught in an incredible range of situations. And so that's good. It doesn't necessarily complicate or confuse things. It can, if we use them well. So Jin Chuan mentioned dispassion and fading of craving, and so there's this list which we have as well, ways of understanding the Dhamma. We have an occasion when there's a monk called Upali, who was actually one of the foremost in the Vinaya, and he had been the barber for the Buddha and the royal princes and the elite of Kapilavatthu or Kapilavastu. And he went forth as well, and one time he approached the Buddha and said, "Lord, could you give us a way of understanding, summarizing this teaching? What is Dhamma, what is Vinaya? How can we encapsulate it?" And so the Buddha said to him, whatever Dhammas, he said, "Ye chakoi me Dhamma upali janayase," whatever Dhammas, whatever things upali you may know. And then it's ekanta nibbidaya viragaya nirodaya upasamaya abhinyaya sambodhaya nibbānaya samvatanti. Whatever things lead to the first word is nibbida, which means literally dispassion, the turning away of the delight in the world. Viraga is the fading of craving. Nirodha is the cessation or the non-arising of things. Upasama, which means true peace or real stillness. Abhinya means higher knowledge. Sambodhi, in awakening. Nibbānaya, to enlightenment, to nibbāna, to nirvana. Eso Dhammo, eso Vinayo, eso Sattu Sasananti. This is Dhamma, this is Vinaya. This is the teacher's teaching, or this is my dispensation. This is the dispensation of the teacher. So that was it in a nutshell. 7 factors to Upali. Whatever teaching leads to complete dispassion, the fading of craving or the fading of lust, non-arising or cessation, peace, higher knowledge, enlightenment, nibbāna. This is Dhamma, this is Vinaya, this is my teaching. And so we can really, so you have the Four Noble Truths, but you have a list like this. And so from our perspective of approaching and says, we're talking as Dharma practitioners here, this is not something which you can necessarily just get going as a conversation when you're doing your introduction to Buddhism and explaining it to somebody who says, well, what's Buddhism about? I wouldn't start here with this type of list, but it comes up, and we're monastics, and you people are serious, that's why you're here. And so this is the language which we talk, and I don't mean Pali or Sanskrit or whatever, I mean the language of This is our way of understanding the Dharma. What was the Buddha teaching? It was like, basically, it's like preparing great food. This is the flavor of the food. What does it taste like? We can talk about the ingredients and this and that and how to do it, blah, blah, blah. But it's got to have these characteristics. And so, and that's why when we think in these terms, we link it to our meditation practice. It is important to see them. So that's what actually happens. There's a practice going on when you turn your mind away from the sense realm, and you basically gently put the brakes on the movement of delight and aversion. And this is what arises. Nibbida, one of the similes for nibbida is like just a turning away, like a feather curls away from a flame. Or you can, like a fingernail would do as well. If you want to try it, the fingernail clipping, hold it next to a candle. It just kind of, just as it gets close to the heat, just sort of shrivels away. And so that's our relationship then to the sense realm and to craving. It's not aversion per se, but it's this experience of just turning away. It's sometimes, put in stronger words like revulsion, these kind of things, but it just has this sense of dispassion, like disinterest. It's like, you're not interested in that, that's not going to do it anymore. And so you turn away, but partly because you see the danger or the disadvantage, the limitation in the sense realm, the fading of craving as well. Or viraga, literally the raga is lust or craving, viraga, the abandoning that. Same thing, it's part of a process which we develop in meditation, where as a result, especially when we use then the wisdom afterwards, looking at the sense realm arising and passing away, understanding things like impermanence, contemplating the real experience of dukkha. What does it mean, this experience of dukkha? Then naturally we see, we can contemplate our lives, the amount we've turned towards the sense realm for our satisfaction, and we see it as limited. It's not like bad, we're not getting on a kind of tirade, religious zeal, like bad sensuality, kill the defilements in that way, but we see it first with wisdom. It's so limited, so like a child, like growing up, you don't play with your toys anymore. That's our relationship to the sense realm. It's kind of like kid stuff. It's, it's what we do, human beings. That's the human realm, samsaric, round, however you want to see it. But this is, liberation. You kind of moving on a bit here. So simply seeing the disadvantage, the limitation, we can just put it down. We've all given stuff up. We've all moved on. We've all, in more basic ways, we apply the same thing towards delight and lust for the sense realm. So nirodha then, which means cessation. So it's not yet final cessation for most of us, but we can see then when you slowly put the brakes on things and you stop being pulled outwards so much and creating, and then it's to do with proliferation, creating plans, creating all kinds of stuff, there's a ceasing. Or another way of understanding nirodha is the non-arising of things. Things don't come up so much. We don't create things which are uncreated. We don't proliferate them into existence. And so this is a cause for upasama or peace, and also a result of a certain amount of peace. And when you taste a bit of peace, if it feels good, then the mind naturally inclines away from craving, passion, creating, proliferating. So when all this creation, constructions, fabrications, sankharas, samskaras can be pacified, then the mind is ripe to turn. We can attend towards the Four Noble Truths. This just leads to this abhinya. Abhinya can have a meaning of more amazing powers like psychic powers and direct experiences of the samsaric round, seeing all kinds of amazing things. But abhi, as you know from abhidharma, just means high. And nya is just knowledge, like knowledge, literally, same root, knowledge, gnosis, knowing. So higher knowing. So it's the knowing of things which are not mundane or not worldly. things to do with the mind, things to do with liberation. Sambodhaya, and so this is our kind of like talking our language, the language of Bodhi, the language of awakening, full awakening together with nature. We talk so much about nature, Dhamma. In Thai, literally the word for nature is Dhammachat, which means the birth of Dhamma, or where Dhamma is born is in nature. That which is Dharma is natural. And you can never separate Dhamma from the true nature of things in their natural state. So that's what we're awakening to. Things without our extra proliferating and creating things as they are. And Nibbana, so whatever leads to Nibbana. And so we have this very, very direct way, and this is our lineage, our tradition, Thai forest tradition, not really emphasizing Pali scholarship. It's not the kind of actually list which Kruba Ajahns give in that way, but we'll always touch on all of these points, but making the same point over and over again, that this Dhamma is to be tasted, this Dhamma has to be known for ourselves, and the flavour of all this Dhamma is peace and happiness. And through knowing ourselves, seeing the nature of things, 3 characteristics, everything's impermanent, everything's what we call dukkha, that which is impermanent, and dukkha, you can't take it to be a self, it's not a refuge, it's not an essence, it's not stable. A very, very simple, very clear framework, but it has to be tasted for ourselves, not theory. And so, the similes are just endless as to what as to how to do it. So a classic example is like, say, taking medicine. You don't just go to the doctor and get your prescription and then take the prescription home and put the prescription on the mantelpiece and then bow to the prescription. You have to go to the drugstore, get the prescription, and even then, you don't just put the bottle of pills on the mantelpiece and bow to that. You've got to take the pills. So very kind of simple, simplistic, but everyone kind of gets the point. That's why we kind of like those kind of examples. Another very simply, talking about conventions, using conventions, for example, and the ultimate conventions and ultimates. It'd be a big discussion. Well, how much of these conventions do we need? And Ajahn Chah was always saying, look, we need these conventions. So in our form, monastic form, we have a lot of vinaya, rules, regulations, code. Here there's a lot of conventions, a lot of discipline, a lot of ways of doing things, and the teachings have evolved into conventions. So a simile that Ajahn Chah gave is, he said, it's like you go to the market and you buy coconuts, and you're carrying your coconuts home, and you're familiar with coconuts, come in a big shell outside, and inside is the white flesh and the nut and the juice. So if somebody meets you on the way and says, oh, what do you got there? And you say, I've got some coconuts. And then they say, well, what are you going to do with those coconuts? And you say, I'm going to take them home and I'm going to eat them. And they say, are you going to eat all the big shell as well? And you say, no. And the person says, I don't believe you. If you're not going to eat the shell, why are you carrying them around for? And so you say, well, I need the shell to take it home. But the essence is in the coconut. I'm not going to eat the shell. So the person doesn't get it, says, no, you're attached to the shell. I think you're going to eat the whole thing. So you can separate that which is a vehicle, that which is used, and that which is the essence, that which you want. But we have to get it right. That's for sure. We can actually eat the shell. So again, the teacher's always kind of pointing us to how to do it, the dangers, what to do, what not to do. And other simple examples like the classic simile, Ajahn Chah, chicken and duck. It's about as easy as you get. So people who don't know truth, don't see the truth, like somebody who sees a duck and wants it to be a chicken. It's just so funny. How stupid is that? It's a duck. Why you want it to be a chicken? You can't make it a chicken. And so that's this very simple simile for wanting things to be other than they are, which we do a lot actually, but we don't really see that. We don't see that that's what we're doing in so many situations. Ajahn Chah would say, yeah, you're like somebody who wants a chicken to be a duck. And so, yeah. But all of these approaches to Buddhism, this very direct approach in super, super simple language, is all, basically ways of pointing to the direct application, the practice of basically understanding the Four Noble Truths, and then freeing ourselves from these wrong perspectives, and tasting it for ourselves. So this word, tasting it, the Buddha used this word, the flavor of Dhamma is like the flavor of the oceans have one taste. The flavor of Dhamma is liberation. So this sense of a flavor is important as well. Ajahn Chah would always talk about tasting the fruit for oneself. It's like you've got a mango, and you've got to taste it for yourself, even if you don't know the words. And so this is when you can, again, come back to the convention, say, the convention's like, it doesn't matter, we can all use different words. And that's not the point. So it's so important then from our perspective, as we were just talking on the way, that's why we don't fall into this doctrinal, dogmatic disputes, or at least not so much. We do a little bit, there's always a bit of that. But generally, if we just understand it's different words, different ways of pointing to truth, of walking the path. So, and again, just to give an example of how simple Ajahn Chah could be, and it would make such good sense. He'd say he'd have his flask sometimes of thermos of hot water, and he'd pour some into a cup, and he'd say, in Thai we call this nam ron, which means hot water. And then in Lao, because in northeast Thailand they speak another dialect, it's not Thai, it's Lao, they'd say it's nam hon, that's hot water. And he'd say, and then the English, the Westerners call it hot water. But he said, if you just put your finger in it, we all know the same feeling. And again, so it's so obvious, isn't it? Okay, it's not in language. Language is a construct, language is a convention. Language, we can even change it. We can even create, and it's changing all the time. And language has to be dynamic by its very nature. And so all of these ways, and so this is basically the very, very direct approach which we take, using just a few, just enough conventions, what we call pariyatti or studying, to then apply it to the practice. You do need a certain amount. And so the key then, again, I'll just kind of keep coming back to Ajahn Chah to kind of illustrate these points. So people would ask him, well, how do you train your disciples? You don't speak English. And so he would ask the questioner, say, well, at home do you have dogs? And they'd say yes. Do you have cats? Yeah. Do you have buffalo? And well, do you speak dog? Do you speak cat? Do you speak buffalo? Well, how do you all get on? And see, again, we make the point very, very simply. And then he'd say, actually, these Westerners, they're like water buffalo. They're not hard to train. You just kind of keep tugging the rope. They soon catch on. And this is obviously really funny for Thais, because the buffalo is a big, stupid kind of animal in the fields, and the Westerners are like, wow, like America, it's like everyone's so intelligent. So to have, like Ajahn Chah, compare his disciples to buffaloes is just like hysterically funny, make the point. And he had, I think he went to school up to 4th grade. And so, so it's not just kind of tugging the rope or leading from the front, a little bit of, so what are the guidelines then? The key guidelines really, as in essence, is a lot to do with, we understand ethics and integrity, but sati, what we call mindfulness, and it's usually translated as mindfulness, sati and sampajañña, clear comprehension. The heart of that is sense restraint and ethics, essentially. So there's a difference between right mindfulness, samma sati in the Eightfold Path, and just say mindfulness, in daily life. And so we have this understanding that to be right mindfulness, to be a liberative path factor, it's got to be grounded, imbued in what we call sila, or ethics, integrity, morality, virtue. honesty. Because, again, the classic example given, somebody like a safe cracker can have super mindfulness, when you're breaking into a house, cracking a safe or doing something very, very unwholesome. But this is not right mindfulness. And so before you even get to, what we call, say, 4 satipatthanas, mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind and mind objects, just the principle that actually just to be what we call guarding our sense doors or guarding our sense faculties is already a big aspect of mindfulness, because we're aware of what we have to do. So this is a huge part of the path, is not so much discussing the terms and the metaphysics of the practice, getting into the philosophy, analysing the cosmos, analysing kind of the psychology, but basically asking ourselves, well, what works? That's the difference. One way of differing between, say, science and religion, or practical materialist things. We could say, well, if I do this, what happens? But we're asking, well, if I do this, how does it feel? What's the result? Do I increase my dukkha, or is it conducive to ultimately increase of sukha, happiness, or decrease of dukkha? And the Buddha himself said, I teach only dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. I teach dukkhanceva, I teach merely dukkhanceva panyabemi dukkha sacanirodhan. I teach merely dukkha and the cessation of dukkha, or the non-arising of dukkha. And this is very much a feeling, happiness, dukkha and sukha, these are feelings, right? They're not, it's emotions we're talking about. And so again, reminding ourselves that straight away it's always going to be an internal intuitive experience, because it's all about, how do you feel? And even in our chanting, we have a line which says, this Dhamma is to be experienced individually by the wise. But the word is actually vedittabho, which means to be felt. It comes from vedana, feeling. It should be felt by the wise. So you're feeling the Dhamma. And so again, that's something which we can pay attention to. So our approach to the Dhamma, we're going to come to the university to study the Dhamma, but it should point us towards our felt experience of our life. Which is, it's not easy. I grew up in London, in the West. Basically, it's all about thinking and, success, education, all of those kind of things, and your material life, your world, even the sense realm, sensual world, is, we're not trained to feel. And it's also like you kind of come and meditate. We're told to concentrate, but we're not trained how to do it oftentimes. And certainly at school, you're also told, pay attention and concentrate. But no one taught us how to concentrate, or how to do that in a way which generated genuine interest. And so these are things, say, mistakes we mustn't make then as we come towards Dhamma practice. Taking the approach that now that actually it's about knowing our feelings, and so that's why the Buddha began by saying dukkha should be fully understood. He's basically saying, the bad news is there's dukkha, but we have to fully understand it. But this is the beginning of the way out. It's cause, craving, and that there's a cessation of it, or there's a non-arising of it, and there's a path. So there's a prescription. Again, it's the old medical formula, the Indian medical formula. The doctor says, you have this disease, this is what it is. Okay, good. And we know what it is now. That's step one. And I know the cause. Okay, good. And I can cure you. Great. And this is what you have to do. So very, 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 very simple, very pragmatic. Always practical. A little bit of theory, but lots of practice. So this is, in a sense, what the heart of, say, Thai forest tradition is like. This word is not so much orthodoxy, but orthopraxy, right practice, right approach, the right way to cultivate the Eightfold Path. there are many, obviously there are many teachings and angles, ways that the Buddha taught us to observe the world, particularly things like the sense realm. Understanding it, again, it's all to do with understanding it, seeing the lure or the delight, the pleasure in sensuality, but then seeing the disadvantage, the downside, the flip side, the limitation of it. And then step 3, what's called the nisarana, the liberation from it, which comes through not attending to the delight and lust in the sense realm. You just begin to, again, turning away, not buying into that, not taking the bait, not biting the hook, not falling for it. But again, these concepts, they give us the framework, they give us the kind of right perspective, very much part of right view. You could say this is the theory, right view, right perspective, right understanding, the right approach. But again, we then have to test that. None of this right view, it's never right belief, right dogma, right truth. It's right view. And so this is the way to approach it. Keep testing, keep trying, keeping on seeing what works, what doesn't work. And constantly, investigating in the light of what we'll also find, because we're different, say like the question yesterday, is there a particular theme of contemplation you can maintain as you practice your mindfulness in daily life? We also find there's some kind of angle on Dhamma that just kind of is yeah, that's really interesting, really fascinating, your little pet angle. And then because there's just sort of so many doors to the same truth, then we don't have to figure out the whole range necessarily. I'll work on Paticca Samuppada for a semester and then I'll move on to this. I think it's really good to go in deep to a particular theme and really see, just how far you can take it, or just how deep your understanding of that can be, and then how to apply it then towards the framework of the Four Noble Truths. Because the Buddha said that Four Noble Truths like the elephant's footprint, in the same way that the elephant's footprint is the biggest in the forest, and all the other footprints of all the other animals are smaller, and you could put them inside, you could fit them inside the elephant's footprint. So too, all other Dhamma teachings can all be fitted in within the framework of the Four Noble Truths, some aspect. And so that's how we do it. We take any aspect of Dhamma. It can be a conventional thing, it can be something like the chanting or the work or whatever we're doing. And then the question is, how does this apply to the Four Noble Truths? How does this relate to the Four Noble Truths in practice, in a way where I can reduce my dukkha, increase my sukha, or go back to the list I started with, how does it lead to nibbidaya, the turning away or dispassion? How does it lead to viraga, the fading of craving or lust? How does it lead to nirodha, cessation, upasama, peace, abhinya, higher knowledge, sambodhi, sambodhaya? How does it lead to awakening? How does it lead to nibbana? And so bringing together the lofty goals of the path, and this, at times almost it can feel, it's just beyond me. It's like, whoa, little me, I'm not worthy kind of thing. Will I ever get that kind of wisdom? But the point is, it's very much bit by bit, day by day. As Buddha said, drop by drop, the great water jar is filled. And how else can we lead our life? I mean, life is step by step, day by day, bit by bit anyway. Everything's like that. So it's totally in line with the way things are as we experience it. Nothing different. It's just that it's going in the direction of liberation, that's all. And in the same way that our teachers will often talk about their struggles and how difficult it is. They're not saying, this is so easy, I just bang, 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 and I got enlightened, The beauty of our teachers is they're sharing their dukkha. Ajahn Chah was sharing his dukkha, was really into it, because he knew it gave people encouragement that this is going to be tough, and I struggle, but I made it. You know, I kind of went through very tough times. He wanted to disrobe at one point. He had a kind of week-long, complete episode, sexual obsession. He was literally visualizing female sexual organs, like just, you know, just so powerful. He just, you know, and why I say this now is that he insisted that that would be in his biography. There was a biography written in 1968, and he told his story. He said, write about my intense sort of period with sexual lust. It was so strong, I was just fantasizing like that. And the monk who was writing it said, oh no, please Ajahn, you know, we couldn't put that in, you know, blah, blah, how could we do that, you know, that's not the sort of thing. And he said, if you don't put that in, there's no biography, because I want basically the true story, and I want people to know that we all have these things and this is how strong it can get, but you just work in the right way, you just patiently endure, and like every hindrance or obstacle or fantasy, you can overcome it. Otherwise people will think, oh, I've got this and there's no hope for me. But, so that's the beauty of the teachers, they share their struggles. And the Buddha gave us so much, shone so much light on the hindrances and the fetters and the obstacles and the difficulties. And he rarely said, this is easy. And he did say there's one type of person whose practice is swift and easy, but there's 4 types. There's slow and difficult, slow and easy, swift and difficult, and swift and easy. Very few are swift and easy. And in the same way, there's just like another little list, and there's types of thoroughbred horse. One type of horse, you have to whip the horse until its flesh breaks before it starts running, you know. Another type, you have to give it one hit. Another type, you just the prick of the whip. And another type of horse, just to see out of the corner of its eye, sees the shadow of the whip on the ground, starts running. And so similarly, there's different types of people. Some people have to experience real heavy dukkha for themselves, weeping, wailing, before they think, oh yeah, this is dukkha, and then maybe there's a way out. Some people experience some, but not a lot. Some people just get a little taste. Some people just hear in another village, somebody got old, got sick, died. That's enough to stir what we call samvega or urgency, and cultivate nibbida, and then the path, these things. So again, it depends on our faculties. We're not all the same. There's whatever 7.5 billion people on the planet, so we all vary. But the principles are the same. You know, our path to it, the approach will be the same in that respect. We got the same 5 khandhas, the same faculties, and the same general hindrances. Just sort of figure out what kind of constellation we are and what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so I said a few words on that, the path of practice, being kind of making it practical, making it real, and also making it fun. I do want to say that, I mean, what sustained me all these years is just incredible amounts of fun in monastic life. You might wonder, how is it fun? But somehow it is. On many levels, you know, on the level of community, just on the level of, say, living in nature, living in a jungle or in a forest. In time, seeing, you know, having little exchanges like this. But for many years, you know, certainly in Thailand, you're not teaching, or your only interaction is arms round. But we also consider that to be good enough. Just with the sight of the samana on arms round, just to be a presence for the villagers, and for ourselves, to be up early and reflecting on, you know, these kind of matters, knowing the kind of craziness we've left behind. A lot of it's relief, like, whew, so, you know, it was a close one, managed to get out fast enough. But enjoying, you know, finding, it's obviously a more refined type of fun, but also we do things like make our robes, so you get into little handicrafts, we have little hobbies. People ask us, do you guys have hobbies? And we say, yeah, we have hobbies. People that like pottering around doing this and that. So you find ways of you know, making this life rich. And so I'm sure you understand that as well as the work we were talking about. It's got to be enjoyable. The middle way is subtle, but you know it as a feeling, as a taste. It's enjoyable, it leads onwards, leads inwards, and is a gradual path. So these are some of the key things to get right and to consciously cultivate. And if it is getting heavy and difficult, then it's very, very important to quickly ask, okay, what do I have to adjust there? Because difficult is okay. Again, like Ajahn Chah would say, it's got to be difficult. You have to have that feeling of going against the stream. This Dhamma, like the Buddha said, pati sota gamini, this Dhamma goes against the stream. It's against the stream of the world. That's why I said so few people will ever really get it. And also in our practice, we're going against the stream of our kilesas, our desires, our likes. So Ajahn Chah's simile was like, if you're crossing a river in a boat, paddling across, you have to point upstream, because the current will take you downstream. And you have to, this comes with effort. This is a path of effort and energy. And so it will be difficult, it has to be. But that's also okay. Mountain biking is difficult. Anything we do is difficult. So, I think probably having a family and raising kids is difficult. So, what isn't? But it's finding ways to get it right and make it enjoyable. Okay, so I will end there. Hope that's of interest and benefit. And I guess we have some time. Questions? Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how to find joy in renunciation. Because oftentimes it seems quite like oh no, I have to give something up.
Yeah, that's right. So, the joy comes with seeing, with wisdom. So you have to ask yourself, well, why do I have to renounce this? And so the renunciation will come naturally, even if there's still resistance, when you see what we call the disadvantage. So that's the question you have to ask first. Well, what does this hold for me? What is the potential here? So I said before, there's this little list. You see the lure, what's delightful about it. That's that thing that makes you want it in the first place. It's called the asada. And yeah, you know that full well. The sense realm, very powerful. I mean, we are sensual, sexual beings. I mean, it's basically how we're here and why we're here. And if we just take a very simple, biological look at the human race, it's a lot about reproduction and growth. We're materialists, essentially, and that's how we're conditioned to view the world. And especially now, especially in the West, we're not coming from a background where renunciation is held up. Say in Asia, at least, say in Thailand, it's interesting. Even though it's very, very materialistic, very sensual, there's this view, you could say, this perspective, which most people don't want themselves, but they still think, if you can give it up, that's really good, and then that's where they bow to the monk. They say, okay, I can't, I'm into this, but if you can give it up, well, sadhu, and I'll come and make offerings, and you're my field of merit, and maybe I'll kind of hang on to your robe, and you'll pull me up next life, kind of thing. Very simple, but they have that respect. Whereas we're in a culture here where that's not even there as much of a concept. Yeah, generally people would talk about, say moderation and not being too extreme, but even then extremism or, conspicuous consumption is often kind of praised and encouraged. So that seeps into our system in subtle and not so subtle ways. So we have to really see the disadvantage. That's why I like to use the word the limitation, because it's just too much to sort of see the essential experience and actually have the wisdom to see it as dukkha. Actually, the Buddha did point to it as dukkha. I'll give you a simile which I just shared last week. One time he's talking to somebody who's into sensuality, and he asked him. He said, if a leper, you know what a leper is, leprosy. He said lepers in India, and even now because you've got this aching, rotting experience, you hold your aching, your rotting flesh over a fire, and literally burn it. It's called cauterizing. And that pain that the fire makes, or that experience, somehow dulls the deep, deep rotting aching. It gives you a different sensation, but it kind of numbs it somehow. And so the Buddha asked this man, like, if somebody had leprosy and they were roasting themselves, now if they were somehow cured, right, they would see other lepers roasting themselves. Would they envy those lepers who are now roasting themselves? And the man said, no, they wouldn't envy him. And the Buddha said, well, why not? And the man said, well, because the leper's cured now. He doesn't have the disease. He has no need to roast himself. And so the Buddha said, and what if two strong men were to drag him towards a charcoal pit? Wouldn't he twist his body this way and that and try to escape? I said, yeah. Well, why? Well, because the charcoal pit is burning hot, and if he contacted it, he would experience death or deadly suffering. So the Buddha said, but is the charcoal, is it only now that it's hot, or when he had leprosy, was it hot? And the man said, yeah, even when he had leprosy it was hot. But because his faculties were distorted, he experienced that pain as somehow pleasurable. And so the Buddha says, yeah, so too, sensual pleasures in the past, now and in the future are hot, burning. But because people have distorted faculties, they perceive them as pleasurable. So this is a very powerful teaching, very direct, and it's just too much for people to take. You know, you can't, because we experience it as pleasure. That's why we have this word, sensual pleasure, and the Buddha even used the word sensual pleasure, because in general that's the experience of it. But actually he was saying it's not. So it's just too much for us to really see for ourselves, but at least we can see the limitations. You've seen, look, this is all I can get out of it. It's good, it's nice, but it's limited, it's temporary, and it comes at a cost. It comes at a material cost, financial cost to your emotions, and like even just look at language. You fall in love, or your mind is seized with emotion, or you're burning with desire, or you're bewitched, or all these kind of words. You're never cool with love, or grounded with love, or you're never wise with love. So even language acknowledges the dukkha, but somehow romanticizes it. That's why we all love like a rom-com or love songs. It's rarely plain sailing, but it's somehow, this is the beauty, it's the roller coaster, it's the kind of the yin and the yang or whatever, But actually the language itself points us in the direction of, when you're head over your heels, you've lost your mindfulness. But that's the perspective, as practitioners we can see that. It's harder in the world, harder probably at your age. So you have to just keep applying your what's called wise reflection, yoniso manasikara, and just to see it as it really is. You say, okay, it's good, but what can I get out of it? What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? And am I aspiring for something better or different? That's what will really clinch it, is if you say, do I aspire for liberation from this? You see? Because that's how you can even look at craving itself. When craving arises, you have an option. You can either say, oh, I've got this craving. I really want to do that. Yeah, I should do that. Or even if you're struggling with it, oh yeah, I've got this craving, but I really want it, but I have to give it up now. And experience a sense of struggle. Or you can see, this very craving is burning me. This very craving is exactly the thing, exactly the place where my life is beginning to, lose its balance, lose its focus. What a pathetic little emotion this is. Kind of abandon it with wisdom. See it as originated based on causes and conditions. So what I see is a form and craving arises. How simplistic is that? I'm more mature than that. I can rise above it, take it as exactly the challenge, as exactly what you now have to work with. Just like somebody solving a problem, maybe building something or fixing something or trying to, like an inventor. Every problem is like, okay, now this is exactly where I have to solve it. Not like, oh, this is the end of our project. This is the new thing to sort of eliminate. in order to go. And it's exactly through eliminating this that it works. So you can do practical stuff like make determinations, it's like the outside in, have guidelines in your life. That's the point of sila, that's the point of ethics, is that there are things which you give up, not negotiable, 5 precepts. But then when it comes to sense restraint, sensuality, sexuality, alcohol, movies, the greater area is very subtle. I mean, we're talking as monastics here. It's good to bear in mind that the Buddha emphasized that, when you're in the lay, in a lay environment, then, the 5 precepts are already a very, very noble, level of conduct. Any further steps in terms of sense restraint, this is really kind of basically moving you along the path. So that's really will depend on your own vision, if you like. It's a lot to do with your dreams, your intentions, what do you want in life, and that is what will guide you. Your goal ends up being what you make your decisions based on basically what do you want, and so that's what we have to also ask ourselves. What do I want in life? So you talk to monastics. Well, at a certain age, we felt, well, this is the sense realm. This is what life has to offer. We've experienced so much. You look at other people, and suddenly a doorway opens, an opportunity arises, and we say, okay, I'm going to go for it, give it a go. And then we lead our life pulled along by that vision or that dream or that ambition or that vocation. And then it's much easier to then make those central renunciations, because we have something guiding us, and something which is all, like an athlete. If you're training for the Olympics, it's easier to give up your chocolate bars and whatever, and they have to train, incredible amounts. So people do it in the world. It's not just a spiritual thing, as long as they've got that perspective. And so that's again a lot to do with right view. If you develop right view regarding the Four Noble Truths, that has to then condition your ability, willingness, and capacity to renounce. But it's tough. No doubt about that. It all comes with the view. It's like giving up smoking. I used to be a smoker, and I was trying to quit. It was so difficult. Partly because you're in the wrong environment, you're with smokers, you're going out to, pubs and clubs, and then you got stress in your life, and it's like a little avenue of craving. But, the important thing is the wisdom, is knowing just how bad it is, and knowing how, just seeing the disadvantage, and knowing deep down, this has to stop, And so in time, slowly the craving. But it was only when I became a monk that I could really quit. It was very, so craving is very strong. Don't underestimate it. The Buddha said, Natti tanhasma nadi, there's no river like craving.
Could you speak to you mentioned being an inventor, fixing things, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and for as long as I can remember, him and I, we've always been fixing things or making stuff. So there was a lot of, feeling either useful because we're fixing problems, or, I come from Italy, so the whole idea of Leonardo, inventors, and I guess it's been burned in me. So and he offered this line. He said he went to a meditation, he had some meditation problems and things, and one of them was, what if there was no problem to fix? And it just kind of dropped there, and what would I be if there was no problem to fix? Where would be my sense of worth, my sense of usefulness? And there was just this emptiness that kind of opened up, and it was scary in a way, and don't know what to do with it. It just...
Well, I think, again, the great thing from the Dharmic perspective, is there's always a problem to fix there. You know, you carry on fixing your mind and fixing your relationship to the external world, because we have to take that perspective. It's time to stop fixing things outside, because that's endless. But then, taking on, just subtly shifting the focus, getting creative, in a very different way. Because it is true, I mean, while we still have our kind of, constructed ego or constructed self, basically we still crave something to do, something to be. And so this whole path is, we're still operating from an unenlightened perspective. We're kind of more or less fixing our minds now. And that's pretty endless. There's always something to look at. But I think it's just good to see that's what we do. The extent to how much we create this identity is that, we have that kind of fear. Ajahn Chah would say, well, it's like the earthworms getting scared that they'll eat up all the earth. Because there's this Thai saying, why do earthworms straight away shit out the earth that they eat? It's like, they're scared that they're going to finish up the earth. It's like, you don't have to worry. You can always find a problem to fix or something to worry about if you want to. But yeah, I mean, fixing the mind, I think that's the point, because we're generally materialists. We do see things, externally. That's our focus, to see problems in the world and fixing things externally, which is good as well. It's great in monastery when you have practical people that can fix things, So it's not bad. That's the thing. It can get into this duality of doing stuff is bad, and only being peaceful is good. So the middle way, that when there's something to do, you attend to it. When there's not, you can put it down, and then you can always turn inwards, and knowing that ultimately you will only ultimately you can fix your relationship to the world, and really fix that there is an end to that. Again, that's the Buddha said, another nice little teaching. So he said, you cannot by travelling get to the end of the world. So take this example, you cannot by fix everything in the world. But he said you can, in this body and mind, the world arises and the world ends. You can reach the end of the world in your mind. That's when you stop creating this world of the sense realm, creating things out of sense experience, creating things which are empty. And in the same way, we're going to fix everything in a way where we'll be quite okay with it by fixing ourselves. Sure.
Just thinking in my mind, I know in the Thai forces you don't do as many ceremonies, but I was wondering what, if you have any tools or methods you use as you chant or recite to train the mind.
Yeah, I think it varies a lot from, say, teacher to teacher. I mean, we have, say, our set of chanting. It's quite a standard set, which is translator. We have the chanting book here. And you'll see that there's a little bit which is more like, say, cultivating the faithy aspect. There's this kind of the three refuges, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then this section and the morning chanting, what's called the passage to arouse urgency, which is moving from faith to then reflecting on the five khandhas, being impermanent, being not self. And then the rest of them are more of our reflections, which talk about reflections, which are more like kind of more contemplations, or aging, sickness and death, loving kindness, the law of karma, the body, 32 parts, moving towards practice. So basically, we use all of those things in that for that purpose of calming, because essentially, whatever doing the chanting, hopefully you can do it, but you're not simultaneously planning your next holiday or your work project. At least you're there in the room, focusing on the, present to the situation, and then the words, cultivating a sense of faith or uplift, devotion, and then these reflections, basically. And as you chant them, and that's why we translate them as well. We don't just do them in Pali. We do it kind of line by line, so that actually you really do reflect on it. I am of the nature to age, I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken, I have not gone beyond sickness. I'm of nature to die, and then all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me, and then kamma, I am the owner of my kamma. And so, you kind of chant these day in, day out. But I think it varies a lot. I think for some people, Westerners can be a bit, ritual averse, and just don't want to do any chanting, can feel that, actually it should be just pure practice. Some people just love chanting and just feel, Bhagiri, they only do 15 minutes, that's such little, we need more time and, chant the Buddha's words. It really varies from person to person and teacher. But interestingly, say Luang Pu Man, one of the real forefathers of the Thai forest tradition, they didn't have many meetings and group chanting sessions, but the accounts from his disciples say that early in the morning and in the evening before his meditation, he would do privately an hour or two chanting, often things like Dhammacakka Sutta, as well as these reflections. And so it's always been there as a, Asians just generally will incline towards it more. It's more or less much more part of the psyche, part of the culture to do chanting, to do ceremonies. And I think you get the whole range of the extent to which people take it, in a more literal, materialistic way. Literally like, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and in Thailand you've got the Deva realms and these kinds of things, and transferal of merits, the extent to which people are really taking it literally, and then the much more psychological interpretation, aspects of the mind, or for the purpose of cultivating loving kindness, or that just really varies from person to person and from place to place. But essentially Thai forest tradition, it's true, doesn't emphasize chant so much. But Ajahn Chah had them translated and had us translate line by line, because he just said, look, these are really good teachings, these are sutta passages, these are reflections. And we don't all speak Pali, and it's really brings it alive.
I was wondering, just now you mentioned the contemplation of the five skandhas are not self. And before you were talking about the contemplation or the Dhamma practice should be felt. And can you elaborate on how do you go about contemplating in your experience the five skandhas are not self? And in our normal experience, how do you differentiate what is the experience besides the experience of the five skandhas?
Okay, we've got 2 minutes for this one. It's a long question, big question. But again, just try and keep it simple and practical. Is that that when we say talking about experiencing and feeling the Dhamma, as well as all of this whole discussion here, basically we're talking in a very kind of conventional world, more or less from the perspective of self. It's like unenlightened beings, more or less on the path. When we're talking about non-self, again, so what do we mean? Because people can somehow think, again, does it, that it's not real, or that I'm not really here, or this kind of thing. And that's not really what I understand the experience of non-self. It's simply that it's an impermanent thing. So you can contemplate feelings as non-self. The non-self characteristic, anatta lakkhana or anatman lakshana, is the characteristic, is that it's impermanent. So just that is already good enough. It's a feeling, I feel it, but it's arising and passing away. It has no essence. So it's neither real nor not real. It's not how can I have a feeling, but if it's not so, then you see, it's to see, it's just that it's impermanent, or that it's dukkha. And even dukkha doesn't necessarily mean suffering, as we know. Suffering is not a very good translation. Just that it's unsatisfactory, or that it's unliberating. It's not freeing. So that I have this Vedana. You have to remember what was Atman pointing to. This is coming from the Indian Vedic tradition of that which is bliss, that which is eternal, that which is impermanent, that which is sacred, that which is truly you. The Buddha was simply saying that all this experience, it's there, but it's not those things. So we have to understand it in the context. Not self is just not a very good translation, because it doesn't really mean anything in English, and it can send people in a very weird direction. You can I'm not here now. Is that what? Which is not really what it means. So keeping it very simple, not even getting to emptiness and non-duality. Just the Vedana, this feeling which I have, it's coming and going, boop, 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 boop. Therefore it's not intrinsically an essence, it's not a refuge for me. I feel good today, I won't feel good tomorrow. That's anatta. You see, that's it. These are the characteristics of that which was not Atman. Atman was permanent, was blissful, was truly who you are, was linked with Brahman. It's kind of moving into the kind of cosmology and religious metaphysics. So the Buddha was pointing us away from looking in the five khandhas for that. What there is beyond that, well, I think we have to keep that for another session. So I think that's pretty good for kind of 5 o'clock. Just want to, appreciate the kind of interest, and I think we also really valuing, we're here, refugees, evacuees, so we're enjoying this kind of Dhamma dialogue, and we're being very well looked after. So